Hello and welcome to this edition of the Cosmic Cafe. I am joined once again by our favourite guest, Maria Jones, priestess astrologer of international renown and repute, creatrix of the Stellar Mystery School, and regular guest here. Maria, welcome to the cafe.
Well, thank you for having me back. We were just chatting, weren't we? We've got lots to talk about today.
So much. Without taking your order, I presume a large pot of mugwort tea as we dive into the astrology of the equinox.
Absolutely. If it's Pisces season, you've got to have the dream tea.
So we are just recording this just as Venus has gone into Pisces. So it's the 12th of March. We're humbling towards the equinox, and it's already, I'm feeling the energies coming in. So we're looking at it from a very much an ascension point of view. The light starting to change. I'm feeling a lot of DNA recoding coming through, but that in turn is being really supported by the astrology. So, shall we dive into the equinox and the joys that it's going to bring us?
Absolutely. It's definitely one of the most intense periods of the whole year. So there's a lot to talk about. We've got eclipses coming up, as I'm sure most people are aware of. But we've also got Mercury retrograding. So she's the first planet to retrograde this year. So since she actually stationed retrograde on direct on New Year's Day, we've had this kind of window of all planets moving direct. So this eclipse season, brings us back into that space of reflection and review. And it's also, really highlighting the journey that we're all on collectively with the nodal axis in Libra and Aries, which began in summer last year, and will take us up until January of 2025. So these themes have been coming up so much in all of the readings I've been doing recently. Everybody that's come has had this as their nodal axis, or they've had cardinal placements, Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn. So I think we're all feeling what is to come. So it's a real joy to be here sharing some of it with you and your listeners today.
Oh, so glad you can come back. It's always a wealth and huge amount of information. So we go into this eclipse season, and when I was looking at the chart earlier, got a little bit in Aries with this huge pileup of planets in Pisces as well, which is kind of having that reverberation around. So as we go into that kind of equinox energy, what do you kind of feel the main themes are going to come up for people kind of collectively? Because I'm seeing a lot of collective energy starting to ripple out just as we get to the equinox.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting equinox this year. And I've been telling the students of the spiral all year, don't wait till equinox to set things into motion because it's not the usual energy this year. You me and Lexi, we're both Aries, so we're waiting for that kind of fiery, fast-paced energy to come through like it does every year. But as Lexi has just mentioned, we still have a big stellium in Pisces, and we've got a Libra eclipse, which happens just a few days after the equinox on my birthday, actually. So a lot of the
2 days after mine.
we've got some beautiful solar return charts this year, haven't we? Me and you, we've got Venus and Saturn and all kinds of things. It's a good job we can sound it out to each other. But everybody will be feeling this energy, not just Aries, because we'll be coming into this Libra eclipse. And at the time of the eclipse, Venus and Saturn will be conjunct in Pisces. So this is really highlighting the journey that we are all on with this nodal axis, which is Libra to Aries, independence, codependence, self to other. So Libra is Venus's sign. She likes relationship, harmony, cooperation. And then we've got Aries, who is the warrioress, who is really this kind of warrior goddess who is asking us, what is best for me? What do I desire? So wherever the South Node is, wherever the lunar eclipse is where we're going to be doing the releasing and letting go. So these themes that are arising are really showing us where our relationships with others and the self are out of balance, where we're doing that shadow Libra or shadow Venus energy, which is usually around having no boundaries, trying to be the nice girl, trying to people please. And with the ruler of the eclipse, Venus, really in conjunction with Saturn, we're looking at all of the ways that we use our relationships to self-sabotage, because quite often we can use our relationships as a excuse or a form of procrastination to stop us really stepping into that Aries energy of chasing the vision and chasing the dream. So it's really looking at how can I maintain this equilibrium in my relationships, which are important as a human being, but not to the detriment of myself. Yeah, so this is where this energy is really coming in, inviting us to really use relationships as the mirror. Venus, the symbol of Venus is the mirror. It's the handheld mirror of the goddess. So relationships are designed to mirror back to us what needs healing within us. So we don't want to go into that Pisces energy of, blaming and projection. We want to come into Aries. How do I take my power back? Yeah. How do I not
And
seek
and
outside?
and that's that theme, isn't it, of being independent, but being in a relationship where you've got two people who are sovereign, rather than those kind
Mm.
of relationship of codependency. And that's what I'm seeing kind of in the collective. You're really seeing people who are in deeply codependent relationships. So when this eclipse season comes along to really shake them, it's going to be a really spectacularly interesting fallout, I think, for some people. So it's really being aware of doing that inner work before the um eclipse season. We're in the energies now, but where am I independent? Where am I codependent? Where am I sovereign? Where am I standing in my own truth? Where are my boundaries? Because it feels like there's going to be a real seismic, whether it's metaphorical or geological shift in the way that we deal with relationships.
Absolutely. And they need to change as we come into this new Aquarian Aeon. The old traditional Saturnian ways of doing relationship are not working anymore. We're now in this Aquarian frequency where we are interrelated, but we are sovereign. And Aquarius actually reminds us, and the North Node in Aries too, actually, is because they're very similar signs, in my opinion. They're both quite autonomous. And they really remind us that the only thing we can ever really change is ourselves. We can only do the work on ourselves. And as we elevate our own consciousness, that ripples out into all of our connections, into our tribe. Aquarius is all about the tribe and the community, but it elevates the consciousness of whoever we are with, and particularly, those we're intimate with. We're going to really be taking on their energy, they're going to be taking on ours. So
Mm.
the more that we can be in our empowerment, in our divine femininity, the more that's going to elevate the consciousness of everybody as well. So the thing is to really stop seeking fulfillment through others.
And it's kind of the age of the romantic novel is dead, really, isn't it? It's the kind of, we're always looking for the knight in shining armor to come and rescue us, because once you have that perfect relationship, everything is going to be okay. But it's really, for me, feeling how we're going to change doing relationships as well. Not that we're all going to go around and have lots of open relationships, but it's more the kind of, how are we interacting with people? What are the relationships going to become like, and how closely are we going to be working with people on a very non-romantic level, but a lot closer than maybe we would have been doing in previous times. So I think it's a real shake up of that kind of, this is the way life should be. This is the way, you know, you are going to be saved through your relationship as the White Knight, you know, comes to the castle, but he isn't going to come. You know, Rapunzel's not putting her hair down. She's actually got to go and unlock the door herself and walk down the steps and actually find herself. So I think people who've got this kind of dreamy Piscean way of, you know, oh, it's going to be amazing, it's going to be wonderful. It's not. It's going to be quite dirty and sticky and messy. And as we start to kind of evolve back into who we truly are, and I think there'll be a lot of pushback from the patriarchy who have sold us this dream as well.
Absolutely. We've been living in a distortion for so long, haven't we, around this? It's actually the feminine that initiates the masculine, not the masculine that's going to come and save us. Again, it's the awakening of women, which is going to shift the consciousness collectively, isn't it? It's not anything that we're going to receive from outside of us. It is something that we cultivate within. It's treating ourselves like we are the sacred altar, right? And this is Aries. This always brings us back to ourselves. And the North Node has been traveling with Chiron throughout February and will be still in close conjunction as we get to this new moon solar eclipse in Aries on the 8th of April. And Mercury will also be retrograding backwards and forwards over Chiron, over the node. So this is a very important energy for us to understand. And what this conjunction is teaching us, you know, the node of evolution and the planet that is associated with the wounded healer, it's really saying that nothing will change unless we do. You know, Chiron in Aries, that generational placement, is saying, take your power back. Take your power back. You are not going to be able to outsource or blame others anymore. You know, so whatever is in our reality, whatever is being mirrored to us in our relationships, is something that we need to work on. It's something that we need to integrate without blaming or judging ourselves. But it's everything that we are judging in the collective or within others. You know, there's a part of us that is also like that, you know. So it's only through accepting and embracing the whole self, Chiron, that we can really start to reach that level of evolution. And like I say, relationships are a great avoidance tool, aren't they? He did this, she did that, you know. So it's going to be a big learning process for us all, you know, as we come to the Aries side of this polarity. And the North Node hasn't been in Aries since 2004 to 2006. The South Node was in Aries 2014 to 2015, but the North Node is a very different energy. The North Node is the frequency that the collective is being pulled into. So I am really inviting everybody that I'm working with at the moment to spend time every day really reflecting on what it is that they do desire and who they are, because we become magnetic when we focus on ourselves. So if we're putting all of that energy into ourselves instead of seeking it from something else, we actually naturally start to attract the things that we want anyway. So it's really knowing who we are and what we want is the key, and then we can start to make the steps to activate that.
And that's almost in kind of contravention to what we've been told as well, isn't it? You know, because the way that our society is structured is that you never put yourself first. You always put the collective first. You are the good girl. You sacrifice yourself. And there's a brilliant book called Anna Forrest, actually, and she talks fierce medicine, and she talks about women being the sacrificial whore who do everything for everybody else, and they're at the bottom of the list. And it's really asking us to put ourselves first. And I know when I've been speaking to clients and said, oh, put yourself first, it's, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. That's really selfish. But we have to break through that conditioning and that programming to realize that if we are replete, we know what we want and we're truthful about what we want. We're not just saying what we think we
Mm.
should be wanting. That actually, that's when the magic happens, because that then puts the energy into the things that you want to manifest. So if you know you really, really are truthful with yourself, you're going to get that. But it's that first is one, it's not selfish to put yourself first, but two, be truthful about what you want, because if not, you're going to be living a lie, and that will be found out. And it's very much the year of the flakes will be found out.
Absolutely. And I think it's very hard for people to even know what they desire, or women. Actually, I'm going to say
Mm.
women. Um,
Yeah.
I know that, there are, um, these different polarities that we work with, but I think many women are, as you quite rightly said, you're conditioned. I love that phrase that you used, self-sacrificing whore. I love that. And we are conditioned to be that way. But naturally, when you focus on yourself, everybody else starts to focus on you as well. So we change that dynamic. But first, as you quite rightly said, we need to find out what it is we authentically want. So that's why I'm encouraging everybody every day. What is it that you desire? What do you need? Or what are you seeking outside of yourself? So if you're in a friendship or a relationship or a family dynamic where you're like, oh, I just wish this person would, give me this or behave in this way, how can you bring that back to yourself? How can you give yourself that thing? And I think for women as well, we quite often look outside of ourselves to see if we're attractive or to see if we're worthy or desirable. But it's time to start self-sourcing, isn't it? It's time to
Mm.
start recognizing that we get to decide that. So it's a very, very powerful time, and it is an uncomfortable axis because people become very disorientated when relationships change. But
Mm.
they are also subject to the natural cycles of life, right? Again, we've been encoded into this belief that a relationship should be forever. If it doesn't last, then it's no good. But actually, they're just there for our learning, for our growth.
Mm.
It's all part of the process. And these Saturn conjunctions, Venus conjunct Saturn, which is exact on the 21st but still active around the eclipse. And interestingly, Mars, the ruler of the second eclipse in Aries, will also be conjunct Saturn in Pisces at the time of the eclipse. So I feel like I'm channeling a little bit of Saturn energy today, and Saturn can be harsh.
Very.
Saturn is like, you cannot avoid reality, especially in Pisces, who loves to be in her fantasy kind of delusional realm. And Saturn's going, no, you can't escape that way anymore. You can't escape through these fantasies or illusions. You have to do the work. And, when we do the work with Saturn, she helps us to manifest something that lasts generations. She helps us to manifest the big dreams. But we have to play by her rules. We have to do the discipline. We have to do the work. We have to get rid of what isn't working.
And I think that for some is a very difficult lesson to learn, because they feel that they, are too good to play by Saturn's rules. But she is a harsh taskmaster. There are, I remember when we were doing some work with Saturn, and it was really deep, really, really powerful. But the second you start applying that discipline to daily life, everything just starts to fall into place. So you do reap the rewards of it. But I think a lot of people are deeply afraid of going in to face what she will bring up for you, because she does bring up some curious things, shall we say. I mean, we're both Saturn in Scorpio, so it's probably the worst place could have chosen for this incarnation. Um, but it's about, for me, having the balls, and there were women, but I like that phrase, having the balls of looking at the dark and going, okay, this is the aspect of self I don't like. This is the aspect of shadow. Okay, how am I going to apply the discipline? How am I going to be grounded in this reality and not float off into the Piscean realm of everything's unicorns, everything's rainbows, everything is sparkles, because it isn't. And even when we move into new earth, which we know is a vibration, not a physical new earth, we can't be so wafty. We have to be grounded in this physical reality. So for me, thinking about it, and I know we chatted about this quite a lot, it's we really need to be grounded, we need to be in our bodies at the moment, and we can't go off into the fantasy land where we all have a pet unicorn, where we all are living in beautiful houses, and I don't know, whatever else, however you describe your kind of fifth dimensional utopia. But the one thing we have to remember, and a phrase that's come up a lot, is the unicorn will still need mucking out. And we've still got to do that for ourselves, because we're still going to be a planet of duality, aren't we? We're never going to get rid of the aspects of self that need working on, because Earth is school.
Exactly. And how boring would it be without the
Very.
shadows? How boring would it be?
Says two women with stelliums of planets in school.
Yeah, yeah. It's not what we're here for. We're here for growth, aren't we? We have incarnated at this time of the turning of the Aeon
Mm.
to help face the darkness, to do this deep integration work. And if you're projecting everything that is going wrong in your life on what's going on outside, governments, reptilian overlords, whatever it is, you're still stuck in that blame pattern. You're still stuck in that, and Saturn will tell you quite harshly that nobody is going to come and save you. You're not going to miraculously ascend and be free of all of your struggles and pains, because if you did, there would be no point in you being here. There would be nothing to grow from. We are here to evolve. Relationships are one tool for that. And we are here to evolve our soul to the next level of its own evolution. The soul's on its own journey. So we can only grow through the difficult experiences. So if you eradicate those, there's not much left. Yeah.
Totally. And I was just thinking about when you were speaking, actually, we can choose to exit the matrix, but we still go into the next level of the matrix. So we take ourselves out the third dimensional matrix with our reptilian overlords and giant trees and whatever else that's currently, the rabbit hole that we need to explore.
Mm.
We then exit and we come into the next level of the fifth dimension, which is the next level of the computer game, so to speak. But we still need to learn, we still need to grow. We all have aspirations to become ascended masters, but we're still going to have this human spacesuit to wear, and there's always going to be something, this brain that we have, that is going to bring up the shadow. And you're right, we can't live in this amazing place. It'd be very boring if we didn't have stuff to deal with. It's just another layer of stuff. We're kind of taking off the heavy jacket of all the third dimensional shadow work and going into the fifth dimension, which I find the shadow work is going to be a lot more intense, because the lighter and brighter that we burn, the more the dark will come, and it's our choice to face it and alchemize it, or go back and feed it.
Absolutely.
It's really watching that with clients at the moment of, if I've disconnected from this and I want to aspire to that, am I still feeding the other behind as well? And I think that's a big Saturn in Pisces thing, is kind of sweeping away that illusion that that we're not sovereign.
Absolutely. And I think at some level, everybody is already enlightened, right? Everything is happening all at once. We are all things at once. So it's really just recognizing that fact, I think, on a very deep level. That's very Piscean. But also, um, there is this element of we are here to attain that gnosis. We are here to attain that connection with the future self or the higher self, or whatever it is we like to call it. In the kind of Thelema tradition, they call it the holy guardian angel. We might call it the higher priestess self. So we are
Yes.
seeking to embody that, not ascend towards it, but to embody it. And the way we do that is actually very Piscean in a way, very Venus and Pisces. It's that we accept everything. We accept everything as it is. We don't have resistance to those parts of ourselves or those things outside of ourselves that we deem as bad. We accept and we take it all in, and we make love to it all. Yeah, that's the medicine of the Aquarian age, the chalice bearer that is filled with the waters of life. So it's really about, I think, not resisting those things that we deem as shadow. It's not pushing it out there, but recognizing that it is part of the great multi-dimensional fractal of life, right? And the planets mirror that back to us constantly. There'll be times when you work with Jupiter and you're expanding and ascending, and there's times when you work with Saturn and Pluto and you go down and you realize you are living on Earth. So we are here to, what I think I'm trying to say is, we're here to take in the full spectrum of experience, not just the things that we think are nice or good.
It's like, if you remember being at Woolworths with Pick and Mix, it's getting the
Mm.
bag of Pick and Mix and knowing somewhere inside there's a sweet you don't really like, but actually you've got to go through everything. And you're right, it's about loving life as a whole and not just cherry picking out the bits that feel nice, make you feel good inside. It's about embracing and going, actually, there's some stuff that needs, I was going to say swamp that needs draining. There's something that needs addressing. Um, and I think for me, when I've had my awakening, you and I have both been doing this a long time in different routes, but kind of merging back into the same way forward, I feel that no one really talks about the shadow. They talk about the dark night of the soul, that you might have a bit of a rough time. This is what's going on. Some people will let you know that your spirit guides sometimes move back when we go through the next stage of evolution, but no one particularly talks about the rough stuff, the really crappy stuff that comes up when we're moving forward. And that is often a point on our birth chart that says, at this point, when you have these two planets in conjunction, you have agreed to do this. And I think there's a real turn. And what I'm seeing is that, as if Pluto in Capricorn was all about dissolving hierarchical, patriarchal, reptilian, overlordic structures, then this Pluto in Aquarius is going to be about dissolving the spiritual hierarchy, dissolving the religious hierarchy, but also dissolving the illusion that everything is always going to end up as rainbows, because that might not be the soul path that we've chosen.
Absolutely. I think there is going to be a big shift in the spiritual community as we have these kind of transits of Saturn and Neptune moving through Pisces and Pluto in Aquarius, because it is, really exposing where we are not being authentic, or where we are living in these delusions, and it does damage people. You'll have people saying, oh yeah, just invest thousands of pounds in my course, you can manifest more, things like this. It can be quite dangerous, and I'm really passionate about this, because when I first started my spiritual journey, everything was Doreen Virtue, and who was the other one we used to talk about a lot, who used to do a lot of the ascension work? His name, I think, was Joshua something. But we all had all of his books, and, it was always, you avoid any kind of negativity. You don't want to manifest negativity. And I think that it is very, very damaging for people. I think it's dangerous, and I think it's deceptive. It's the shadow of Pisces. And a lot of people will put up with, traumatic situations or abusive situations, as they, just trying to see the love and light in everybody. So it's really important that we do recognize that we are living in a 3D Saturn matrix structure, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Matrix actually means mother. So we are in physical incarnation for a reason. And if we don't look at the shadows, then we are only living half a life. And that is where the magic is often as well. That's where the power is. The power's in the shadow realm. That's why the shamans always go to the underworld, because that's where the magic is. And Chiron also reminds us that we can only teach what we have healed within ourselves. So the more that we go through these dark night of the soul experiences, actually, the more wisdom that we gain. There's no point learning from people who have never experienced any kind of hardship. I want to learn from people who have been through the most abominable situations and still turn their life around and still have a high level of consciousness and a high level of success. Yeah. I don't want to hear about, you can't receive the wisdom in the same way from somebody who hasn't experienced what you have experienced. So again, that makes, your unique teaching frequency.
Yeah.
And the age of bypassing is definitely over.
It's literally the word you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say there's a lot of spiritual bypassing and what I'd call spiritual trauma, spiritual abuse going on at the moment. I've been talking about it a lot. I'm talking about it with another astrologer. Actually, we're going to do a little bit of work on this, kind of getting it out there that this is no longer acceptable. We have to really stand in our own sovereignty, and there will be some of us who will be disliked within the community because we will be calling out and saying, I see it. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. But I think those of us who've got the confidence to stand up and say, we're not naming names, but actually saying, look, you can't bypass anymore. Go away and face your shadow. And we are the ones who are here to hold you while you face that shadow. So there's nothing wrong with having bypassed someone, for example, to turn around and go, actually, do you know what? I've realised I've done that. I need the help. And there's loads of us out there now who have faced the shadow, who have faced the trauma, who can say, and we'll hold your hand. So the pupil becomes the teacher. It swaps round. I've got this real feeling that there'll be a, careful what I say, what I've been downloading actually, with this seismic shift where the old guard fall away to go and do the next level of their work, and the I'm going to say the young guard, the next generation, step out and step up into their leadership roles, and it'll swap and change around a little bit, but there's a real shift that the people who have done the shadow work, who sat in the trauma, will now start to rise to the top, and there'll be a rebalancing. There you go. Little insight into my morning channeling.
Absolutely. And I think that's the Pluto in Scorpio generation, who are now going to be having their Pluto squares from Pluto in Aquarius, right? We are the shadow workers. I mean, for me and you, it's very amplified because we also have Saturn and Mars there. But in general, that generation of the early 80s, we're having
Mm.
our Pluto squares. So it's really that time of liberation and recognizing, you know, where the old needs to burn away. And a lot of the hierarchy are the Pluto and Leo generation. So they're the opposite to Aquarius, you know, so they can still very much be in this kind of hierarchical shadow Leo energy. And the Pluto in Scorpios, you know, we're all about seeking and hunting the truth. So there is a definite shift going on. And I think spirituality itself has become capitalistic, it's become Capricornian.
Incredibly.
Um, so anybody that is doing spiritual work, spiritual teaching, and we have to reflect in on this every day because no one's exempt from it, especially when your business or your livelihood depends on the work that you're doing. So that's why we have to realign ourselves every day with, you know, is this true for me? Why am I doing this? And the answer should be because we are here as priestesses of the Aquarian Aeon. So it's very, very significant. And it's a very significant time we're living in. And there is no way that you can ascend without doing shadow work. That is something that has been taught in every mystery school since the beginning of time. You know, they
Mm.
used to call them diamonds or demons. Now we call it the ego, whatever we want to call it. So I recommend that everybody checks out the work of Carolyn Lovewell, used to be Carolyn Elliott, because she's the
Existential
expert.
pink.
Yeah, we know always come back to this, but she is the expert on it. I'm doing some training with her at the moment as well because we all need to continue to work on
Yeah.
ourselves, right? We all need to do that. And being an Aries, we're in for a big time. So it's very important that we continue to do that deep dive and own our projections, own our delusions, because people who don't want to live in reality, people who are in this kind of spiritual bypassing bubble of escapism, are in deep pain and they
Mm.
don't want to feel it. And that's understandable. But they're just going to have to come back and do it again, right? If they don't do it now.
And when you were saying that, actually, I was really thinking about that capitalism of spirituality, of how, you know, social media is filled with, oh God, it was law of attraction, wasn't it? Manifesting,
Mhm.
abundance, do this, energize your business by doing this, pay for this. And actually, that isn't what it's about at all. And this is where many of us have struggled because we can see this 3D reality, this kind of capitalism playing out, when actually it's not about that. It's about being of service, about being, you know, monetized, because money is the current energy. You've been paid for the services that we do, but it's actually about bringing the wisdom through. It's about bringing those alchemical skills that can actually transform and help someone transmute what's going on for them. And I think it's, I mean, Caroline Elliott, can't pronounce her name, but I mean, she's amazing at doing that, of really getting into and getting to know your shadow. Because you're right, when I speak to people who are of the love and light generation, they're really struggling, really struggling. And it's not just the kind of Pluto in Leo, but it's also, you know, the people who have Pluto in Scorpio, who have kind of hooked onto this, oh my God, this is the way I run a business. It's going to crash and it's going to burn and it's going to be quite soon. And it's just, you know, I almost feel like you and I are there at the, you know, end of the night and a bar, kind of with a mop and bucket, kind of clearing everybody up and going, actually, you know, it's time to move on. It's time to alchemize that toxic sludge. And you're right. I think I know we've chatted about this a lot, but going back to the old practices, going back to the old ways, the old mystery schools, I think will rise again.
Absolutely. We're rebuilding them for this Aquarian Aeon. And again, you know, these practices are evolving through time as well. Everything is in its own evolutionary spiral. And I think the only when we're living through times like these where everything is very uncertain, the fate of humanity itself is kind of in the balance a little bit. You know, are we going to blow ourselves up? Quite possibly.
Hang on, I didn't sign up for that one.
Yeah. All of these different timelines that can be tuned into. So the only thing that we can really do is work on our own self-realization, is work on our own soul's evolution, right? That needs to be the focus. And then, you know, the wisdom in a chironic way can come down to whoever is drawn to learning from that. But we have to make that the primary focus. And that is what is going to fulfill you anyway, isn't it? You can have everything and still feel very disconnected and unfulfilled. You know, again, capitalism, get this, get that relationship, you know, build this business, blah, 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 be happy, be successful. But you can have all of that. And if you have no knowledge or connection with your higher self, that will just feel empty anyway. So there's a depressing Saturnian thought for you. So it all has
Doom.
to come back to that, to being that embodiment. Mm,
But it doesn't. I mean, it's a more fulfilling life if you can embody everything and kind of, on the great buffet of life, go and choose the things
mm,
that, might make your mouth kind of go, oh, not really sure, but that's what we're here to do. We're here to learn. If, the universe is a learning playground, Earth's sort of primary school, secondary school at the moment, isn't it? There's so much more to learn and to alchemize. And I think as we rebuild the kind of mystery schools, it's taking back the power that's been taken away from us as well.
absolutely. I mean, we were talking very much about the archetype of the sorceress.
Mm,
And, you know, for me, that energy, you know, sorceress, source, it's tapping into that source, embodying that source within us. So, you know, again, in the old kind of Crowley Thelemic teachings, you hear the phrase, every man and woman is a star, which means we're all the center of our own gravity. You know, we're individual, but we're not separate. You know, we're all stars in the body of Newt, but we all have our own connection to source, which is what allows us to manifest and create. So it's really, I think, being aware of that's Aries again. It's all comes back to being aware of
mm,
that power within you. You know, you can choose. You can always choose your thoughts. You can always choose your perspective. You can always change in any moment. Yeah, you're not the victim of your circumstances.
no. You are your own knight in shining armor
Eh,
if you choose to be.
Exactly. 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 You are your own dragon, we could say. Oh,
Oh, I like that one.
there's the most Aries film ever that's come out on Netflix. It's got a dragon in it, and it's called Damsel. So if you want to tap into the Aries energy, go and watch that. Me and my little niece, she's a Leo, and she was like, you know, this is the best film ever. So
Yeah, look at that now.
it's
Anything with
great.
dragons is cool, but to be fair.
It's great. I was like, this is the perfect time for this to be released into the world. So it's really, you know, Aries is the warrioress. You know,
Mm,
she is Freya or Morrigan or Boudica. You know, the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, or one of the previous times Pluto was in Aquarius, we had Boudica leading the revolution against the Romans. So this is the kind of energy that we are cultivating.
mm.
You know, she's not worrying if she's in a high vibrational frequency. You know, she wants to save the tribe from
Yeah.
the invaders. So it's it's recognizing that we are, you know, in a bit of an astral battle at the moment.
Mm. Absolutely. And for me as well, when you look at the astral battle, it's the
Mm,
power of just saying no and not getting involved in it as well. And when I kind of talk about the revolution and the rebellion that we often get with Pluto and Aquarius, we've had Boudica, we had the dissolution of the monasteries, the Industrial Revolution, civil wars.
mm,
Yes, we can let that happen again. However, we can choose to do it differently this time as well. And that is through peaceful non-compliance, of saying no, of going and building our own community, of not, tapping in the code to blow up our neighbouring country, but actually being a complete rebel, but rebelling from the heart to allow us to really move forward. And I think that for me is going to be the interesting thing to watch. Are we going to feed the fear on our screens, or are we just going to say, actually, I'm doing it differently? And that, for me, that peaceful rebellion is actually going to be more powerful than the person who picks up the gun and says, oh, by the way, nice to
mm,
know you. I think it is channeling Boudica in a very similar,
mm.
but slightly less physically destructive, but more kind of creative way, is the way that I kind of see it at the moment.
Absolutely. Aquarius is the ether, and everything begins in the astral realm. So
Mm,
there's a really amazing book about the Battle of Britain, around what the magicians were doing and how they were working.
yeah.
Last time we were in this kind of world war situation. So, what we do, the rituals that we hold, and the evolution of our consciousness is what is actually fighting the war in
Mm,
the astral realm. So the more of us that become conscious and do gravitate towards these communities and step outside the system, yes, the less power it holds. And
mm,
there only needs to be a certain tipping point, doesn't there? I always forget the exact number. I know, the 144 is the popular one, isn't it? But there only needs to be a certain number of us for that to start really
mm,
taking effect. So again, it's becoming that sorceress, it's becoming that enchantress, and really saying, no, I'm going to put this into practical action. I'm going to do my daily rituals, I'm going to do my practices, I'm going to evolve myself, I'm going to integrate my own shadows so they are not mirrored in the world around me. So the only way that we do this is through cultivating awareness and spiritual practice, in my opinion. So again, we have to put ourselves first and create the time to do that.
Absolutely. And that's, if everything is created on the astral as well, you've just reminded me, because I was exhausted the other day and kind of tapping into it. So we're doing all this work in the physical body, and then there are groups of us going out in the astral at night as being part of this huge battle. And it was somewhere kind of mixed between Harry Potter and Narnia. We're
Mm,
taking, if we're choosing to do, literally hit squads into the shadow on the astral and blasting away all these different layers and kind of corralling all this energy as well. So we have to make time for ourselves, because if we are busy on the astral and in the etheric at night, we do need the time for the rituals, for putting ourselves first to change the energy, because it's like a dual role. Essentially, we're changing the energy in our kind of dream time, but then we need to change the energy in the physical reality as well. So I think there's a lot of that going on at the moment, a lot of kind of slightly exhausted sorceresses and sorcerers walking around and going, what happened last night? It wasn't, I don't remember.
yeah, and that's a happy side effect of Pisces energy too. Everyone's exhausted because it's the sign of rest, it's the sign of
Yeah,
dreaming. It's where
yeah,
we enter the dream temples, and we are up there working hard, and everything that we're seeing up there as well is also a reflection of our own shadows.
exactly. Yeah.
These shadow forms are going to take the shape of things that we also need to integrate. So dreams can be a great way of connecting with the subconscious and
Mm,
seeing what it is, what is coming up for us at this time. So dreaming is something that we work deeply with as star priestesses, isn't it? Reflecting on our dreams, and they are the messages from our soul. And I think, you know, when you've done a lot of inner work, when you're having these dreams that do reveal to you the true nature of reality.
Yeah, really, really powerful stuff. So we can look forward to what can only be described as a really fiery March and April, I feel, with a lot of watery energy going on as well. I think it's going to be a deeply powerful time with the equinox, with that eclipse, that Mercury
Mm.
retrograde, which obviously we're all looking forward to. We've got Venus in Pisces, and then we've got Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, kind of doing their destruction and dissolution as well. So it's a deeply potent couple of months.
Absolutely. And with eclipses, it's always a wild card energy. So
Mm.
it's just being aware that whatever is shifting is something that needs to shift. So there's no point trying to hold on. You know, Pisces really gives us that gift of acceptance that all things end and all things are reborn with Aries. So there can be very quick shifts, positive and maybe slightly disruptive as well, because that is the nature of life and very much the nature of the eclipse cycle, you know, the Ouroboros, the serpent that eats its own tail. So we have these every 6 months. So we know that we will survive, but it is, you know, very good to be aware of how we can actually consciously work with it and understand, you know, why things are happening as they are. So it's really a time of, if I had to sum it up with the Chiron activations, it's a time of coming into our true power, authenticity, and desire. So anything that does not align with that is going to be coming up to be looked at.
Powerful few months. And
Mm.
should anyone want to dive deeper into goddess astrology, is the silver spiral starting once again in March?
It is. We begin again on the 23rd, which is a very significant date.
Not as much as the 25th.
So we begin again. The
I will be
doors are,
thinking of you, yes.
yeah. It's going to be a very interesting astrological weekend. It's going to be a very powerful start to the journey with Saturn and Venus and the eclipse looming. So we have a couple of options this year. You can take part fully online again now because we are in the Aquarian Aeon, and this is what the goddess wills. Or you can choose to be part in person in Glastonbury and do parts online. So this year we'll be working very much with these nodal polarities. You know, these are the underlying themes of the group that we'll be gathering. So if you feel like you want to step into your full power, that you want to do your shadow integration work, because there's no better tool than astrology for shadow integration. If you feel like you are ready to step into that sorceress archetype, you can find all of the information on the Goddess Temple Teachings website or through my website. There's a link on my website to the Stellar Mystery School. So if you are feeling the call, now is the time for astrology. Aquarius is literally the sign of astrology. So the power of the stars is really reawakening and coming forward as a tool for collective and personal evolution at this time.
And it's a pretty amazing course as well. Just dropping it in there. If anyone's thinking about it, don't think, just do it. Is what I would say. Maria, it's been fantastic to talk to you. I'll put all the links in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming back to share all your wisdom.
Thank you for having me. It's always such a deep dive that we do, isn't it? And What else would be expected with our birth charts, eh?
Exactly. And I'm sure we will be back again, chat a
Soon.
bit later on in the year, maybe it's coming towards summer solstice and the summer of retrogrades.
Yes, yeah, that's a really interesting time, but yeah, we can talk about that another
Save that for later. So
time.
thank you everyone for listening, and we will speak to you soon. Take care. Goodbye.